Start with contracting sprites. Chapter 236, The Power of Crown Level. The battle ends on a huge tree a few hundred meters away in front of Whale Gate. Ever since he discovered that the dazed crow was injured, Su Hao's eyes never left the interface. The dazed crow's injuries have worsened. Petrification injury. He must have encountered a snake-headed demon skilled in petrifying light. They seem to be still fighting. What enemy did they encounter? Su Hao was a little worried. But he couldn't know the situation in the distance, nor could he summon the three sprites back at the first sign of danger. Perhaps they had a huge advantage and were chasing the enemy. The electric bear's injuries are very mild. As for Butterfly, it's just a little tired. It should be within my range of control. On the interface, the state of the electric bear changed. Sprite, lightning bear. Status, light injury. Click to expand for details. There are many types of injuries on the dazed crow. Apart from petrification, there is also damage such as thunder, cuts from slicing, and so on. But there's only one type for Big Fat Bear. Its injuries are very similar to the flaming blade, and they are on its upper left arm. That was a secret signal. Before setting off, he had made some secret signals to Butterfly. Together with the injuries of the dazed crow. Sprite commandeering, summon. Su Hao spread his fingers. 1 and 2 marks appeared on his fingers. The next moment. Buzz. At the same time a large amount of soul power was consumed, space rippled, and a big fat bear jumped out. Sob. Sob. It had only sold itself halfway when it discovered that it was actually on a tree branch dozens of meters tall. The moment the weight pressed down, the tree branch shook. It hurriedly laid down, hugged the tree branch with both hands, raised its head, and looked at him with innocent and pitiful eyes. Su Hao was rendered speechless. This, probably, perhaps, is my mistake. Within Whale Gate. At the Strategic Command Center. In front of the rows of computers sat many warriors of Whale Gate. Many of them weren't sprite trainers, but they were an indispensable part of the whole Whale Gate battle area. The C-156 and C-169 wristbands have been out of signal for 6 days. Preliminary judgment suggests that something may have happened to the 2 sprite trainers. The warriors in the command center remained silent. But they had experienced too many similar situations. Right now, they needed to analyze whether those 2 sprite trainers had sacrificed themselves or been captured alive. It could trigger other changes. The data converged bit by bit. The first-hand intelligence of sprite trainers returning from the forest was also transmitted to them. Suddenly, a high-level warrior widened his eyes and looked at the few possibilities analyzed by data in front of him. He was immediately shocked. He immediately applied for permission to check the situation of some of the wristbands. What? Demon Snake City might have a big operation. And they might have already set up a trap. Heavenly King Wu asked. That's right, it's just nice that you're here. Get ready immediately and follow behind the team secretly, just in case. The principal added, don't expose your Heavenly King level identity, if I understand, no one will see me attack. Also, find your junior as soon as possible. Heavenly King Wu acknowledged and left immediately. The principal got up from his seat and went to the window, looking down at the vast forest of giant trees and the majestic city on the other side. A powerful aura emanated from the old man. For a moment, his back view became incomparably tall. Senior Wu. Su Hao, who had just climbed up the city wall, bumped into Senior Wu who was flying out. Trading Puppet landed, and Senior Wu came in front of him. It's good that you're back. According to the command center, there may be a big operation in Demon Snake City, and the enemy may use our sacrifice of the sprite trainer wristband to set up a trap. Don't leave the city for the time being, stay on the city wall to assist. Senior, you mean the distress signal trap? Yes. Are those 2 elite wristbands? Yes. How did you know? Could there be a traitor? Because of the traitor, the enemy got the passcode of the wristband and set up a trap, wanting to nibble away at our sprite trainers one by one. Su Hao shared Butterfly's guess, about 40%, with his own inference analysis, 60%. Then, he saw Senior Wu's dumbfounded expression. How do you know everything, and even know more than me? Giant wood forest, low altitude. Trading puppet brought along a few people and flew at an extremely fast speed. In the back, several extraordinary level sprites were using their special movement methods to travel. They had to rush to that valley. If they could win several master-level sprite trainers of Demon Snake City, it would already be a pretty good result for Whale Gate. There should be a Demon Snake Oracle among them who is qualified to command so many master levels. Oracle. It's a position in their tribe. The position of the Oracle is rather high, so they might know some secrets. Heavenly King Wu said, "Fortunately, you're clever. Otherwise, he just didn't expect that his little junior not only dodged the enemy's encirclement, but also got first-hand intelligence. Simply. What the F***ck? In the tree hole. It had been a while since Butterfly saw any new information on its wristband. They could only hear the occasional rumbling outside. It felt that its spiritual force had already recovered a little, so it turned around and said to the dazed crow, "Gurgle." Squawk. Crow shook its head and shook it, indicating that it wanted to follow along. Gurgle? Gurgle. The cover of the tree hole exploded with a boom. Butterfly's figure flew out, and when it opened its eyes, it used Eye of Nightmare. The two Demon Snake City sprites that made eye contact with it froze for 2 seconds before falling down. Butterfly didn't stop and flew straight towards the place where the battle waves were the strongest. Behind it, the dazed crow that had caught up extended its wings and slashed at the two unconscious snake-headed demons. It flew forward without looking back. Squawk. Boom. Boom. There was no length of time on the battlefield. Under the flying flames of war, every second seemed especially long. Ji Yang was a graduate of Whale Island University. He had already graduated 3 years ago. Ever since he graduated, ever since he was in his 3rd year of university, he had started to be a small soldier in the Whale Gate area. Several years passed in a flash. In the 2nd year after graduation, his sky-patterned tiger broke through to the extraordinary level. Ji Yang also grew from a small soldier on the battlefield to a team leader of a small team. In the past few years, he had also encountered countless dangers and had fallen into danger, but he had always successfully survived. But today, comrades, today we might. But even if we die, we can't let those barbarians from Demon Snake City get away with it. Ji Yang looked around. The teammates looked exhausted. The protective barriers around their bodies were already very dim. Further out, their sprites were fighting desperately, but they also fell one by one. All that was left was the sky-patterned tiger covered in wounds. The heavily injured Thunder Lion King. Elephant General who had lost an arm. And that sprite, which he recalled, was named Butterfly Fairy. Gurgle. Ji Yang heard the Butterfly Fairy call. The cry didn't seem desperate, but full of surprise. I must be hearing things. Gurgle. It called out, and the sky-patterned tiger also roared. The desire to live seemed to have appeared in its eyes. Where are the reinforcements? Ji Yang thought. Then, he heard rumbling sounds coming from the periphery. Flames and frost intertwined, and huge trees tilted and fell. On the left, a gargoyle dragon rushed out and pounced towards an extraordinary snake-headed demon. On the right, rolling waves came attacking. On the huge waves was a tide-calling spring sprite. Its hands closed together, and countless water dragons flew out, forming a huge ball-shaped cage, trapping several Demon Snake City sprites. The Demon Snake City sprites in the water ball struggled continuously and gradually suffocated. Ji Yang was stunned. Were there really reinforcements? With a gurgle, thousands of soldiers and horses came to help. How did it know that someone was coming? Rumble. The ground trembled, the aftershock raising strong winds, but Ji Yang discovered that an invisible force was protecting them. The shock wave was separated in front of them. After surviving the calamity, he sat down on the ground. At this moment, he saw that butterfly fairy fly out, its body shrinking in mid-air, flying into the arms of a young man and falling asleep. That person. Was he the sprite trainer of Butterfly Fairy? Su Hao looked at Butterfly in his arms, who was covered in wounds and very tired. His heart ached very much. Halfway through, the dazed crow was summoned away by him in advance because its injuries were too serious. At this moment, it was receiving treatment. A fairy snail flew over riding a water dragon. Droplets of sparkling water landed on Butterfly. He saw that the wounds on Butterfly's body had faded a little. "Thank you." He thanked it, and the fairy snail flew forward to treat the other sprites to try to ensure the survival of those heavily injured sprites. As long as they didn't die, they could all be saved after returning to Whale Gate. Under the situation where more than half of the masters were dispatched from Whale Gate, in just a moment, the battle scales completely tilted. Some Snake Demon City sprites died while others were injured. Those people in leather armor also rode their sprites and escaped. But they definitely couldn't escape. Suddenly, a terrifying wave of air exploded in the air. In Su Hao's eyes, giant trees dozens of meters tall were crushed into powder amidst rumbling sounds. It formed a blank area of hundreds of meters. Over there, in mid-air, two sprites appeared. A trading puppet. The other was a snake-headed demon with its hair hanging down to its waist. It held the sacrificial wand and floated in mid-air. Monarch rank snake-headed demon. Dragon Nation people, do you want a war? A sharp voice came, but it couldn't tell the direction and echoed in all directions. Heavenly King Wu was not to be outdone. With the power of the trading puppet, he increased the volume. It drowned out the enemy's voice. "Come on!" Tisk! On the solidified wand of the monarch rank snake-headed demon, countless yellow rays were suddenly emitted. It was intercepted in mid-air by the psychic attack. It exploded directly. Boom! Rumble! Huge trees were affected, turning into the color of soil and rocks, and then shattered into countless rocks in the aftershock. From time to time, hundreds of meters of ground would be lifted. Smoke and dust filled the air, covering the two sprites. The power was more than 10 times stronger than an extraordinary level. Su Hao sat on the other flying sprites and looked back. When he saw that terrifying scene, he was secretly shocked. Will the war between us and Demon Snake City break out just like that? Probably, probably. Heavenly King Wu and that Heavenly King Demon Snake are restraining themselves, right? The other person on the flying sprite just said. The battle waves coming from behind them became even fiercer, gusts of strong winds were chasing and hitting them. The sprites sitting down flapped their wings and kept flying in the forest. The battle waves gradually faded away. After a long time, Su Hao returned to Whale Gate and looked behind. The forest was vast, and there was no movement. He was a little worried. At this moment, Whale Gate's ear-piercing alarm had already sounded. Sprite trainers brought their sprites up the city wall and looked into the distance. At this moment, Su Hao saw that at the other end of the forest, a small black dot seemed to have appeared under the grand city. The black dot was extremely fast, constantly enlarging in his vision. He saw it clearly. It was a sprite that he couldn't call out. Its body was huge, it had 9 long heads, and the hair color of each head was different. It was like a 9-headed snake, dyed red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and purple. But Su Hao couldn't laugh. His heart pounded violently. It was the pressure of the 9-headed snake demon. He looked at the sky. As the 9-headed snake demon moved, the sky there darkened, as if it was the end of the world. Suddenly, the sunlight above their heads was also blocked. Su Hao looked up suddenly and saw clouds and mist lingering above. There was a long shadow tumbling in the white mist. It gradually revealed its appearance. It had a body that looked like a snake and a dragon. It had no feet, and a pair of wings spread out on a third of its body. Its figure flew, raising clouds and mist. Half of the white clouds in the sky pressed down, turning into the shape of a tiger, a snake, and a dragon, pretending to pounce. That was a sprite flying mist snake. The principal's trump card. The two sprites were very far apart, facing each other in mid-air. Half of it was shrouded in mist, while the other half was covered in dark clouds. After confronting each other for more than 10 minutes, just as the atmosphere became increasingly solemn, as if a big battle was about to break out, two of the heads of the nine-headed snake demon trembled imperceptibly. Then, it left without looking back. Watching the snake demon leave, the flying mist snake also gradually restrained its aura. With a flash, it disappeared into the clouds. Chapter 237, The Electric Bear's Evolution Preparation. The two crown-level sprites left one after another, making everyone on the city wall sigh in relief. In the following period of time, the situation in the Whale Gate battle area was still tense. Because of the successive appearance of heavenly kings and crown levels, they didn't capture the sprite trainers of Demon Snake City at that time. They only killed one master level, several elite level, and several sprites. Instead, they caught the traitor. It was said that he would be sent to the sprite court. That wasn't something Su Hao should be concerned about. He only cared about the injuries of Butterfly and the others. None of them were serious. They completely recovered that day, but Su Hao didn't go onto the battlefield again. Instead, he stayed in Whale Gate to rest and study. That was also the teacher's suggestion. With the personal guidance of his teacher's sprites, the sprites improved rapidly. The usage of unique skills, the control of elements, and so on were similar to monarch rank, but those two sprites, the 12-winged Holy Brilliance Spirit and the Cabinet University Scholar, were indeed extraordinary. Not only in terms of strength. Both sprites were already dozens of years old. They were dozens of years old under the years of war. They were experienced, had strong teaching abilities, and were stronger than Senior Wu's trading puppet. Cough, why was he comparing them against the trading puppet again? But other things aside, trading puppet's flying carriage technology was pretty stable. Among the 5 sprites, the ones with the most obvious improvements were Butterfly and Bright Night Spirit. Their abilities were the most compatible with their teacher's sprites. Butterfly's illusion control ability, especially the illusion butterfly tactics, had improved significantly. In its words, it just wasn't that easy to let that red snake-headed demon find its real body again. Although Su Hao had never seen the red snake-headed demon before. The Bright Night Spirit could already quickly switch to a light/dark state against the environment. At night, the time taken to switch from the dark side state to the light side state had already shortened from the original 5 to 6 seconds to less than a second now. Ew. Phew phew phew. Phew phew. Ew. Ew. The long hair of the Bright Night Spirit turned from black to blazing white, then black in a second, and then white in a second. The other thing that kept changing, included its personality. It was quiet at times, and noisy at times. It's time to take your medicine, Fufu. Ah, no, 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 no. Among the remaining ones, Dazed Crow, Big Fat Bear, and Dumb Unicorn had the slowest improvement. There was no need to mention them. In the blink of an eye, the half-month battle period ended. Su Hao left Whale Gate with the other new recruits and veterans. Dozens of sprite trainers were exchanged with them. When he returned to school, he lived the boring and dull life of spending money on pets. He spent credits, intelligence points. He observed the data of the few sprites from time to time and adjusted the cultivation strategy. In just 2 months, the bright night spirit is about to reach the limit of entry level, but its foundation is relatively ordinary, and it's only a first-generation sprite. It should be stuck for a long time before it can break through. Well, it'll be stuck for a month and a half. Dumb unicorn, the main condition for evolution is bloodline concentration 30%, but right now, its bloodline concentration is only 24%. Since breaking through to elite level to approaching the limit, it has only increased by 6%. It could be seen that the bloodline concentration was indeed very difficult to increase. From the looks of it, it needs to break through to the extraordinary level first, then increase the concentration of its bloodline before it can satisfy the conditions for evolution. But it's only a horse right now, an evolved horse. To break through with just the capabilities of a horse, Su Hao found it very difficult. As expected, it needed him, the sprite trainer, to give it a hand. And Big Fat Bear, come here. Howl howl. The big fat bear in front of him had grown taller and fatter. Its fluffy hair was very beautiful, making one unable to resist at first glance. He reached out and rubbed his smooth hair up and down. It felt very comfortable to touch. Hey! Don't worry, I have to do a check-up for you. Su Hao stroked the bear and performed a full-body physical examination on it. He came to a conclusion. The increase in your basic qualities has slowed down. Hey! The amount of nutrition consumed every day is equivalent to the amount of cultivation needed to complete a mission, but your improvement is showing a downward curve. Hey! Electric Bear hugged its head and shook its head, indicating that it didn't understand and didn't want to listen. Su Hao could only sigh when he saw its appearance. It looked like the big fat bear didn't have the potential to be cultivated into a sprite cultivator anymore. This also means that the potential of your form has pretty much been fully explored. You need to evolve. Howl howl. It understood what he meant when he said that. There was naturally a reason for letting the electric bear evolve instead of waiting until it reached the limit of elite level before evolving. Its increased speed had slowed down now. From advanced elite level to elite level limit, it might take 2 to 3 months, or even 3 to 5 months. After a while, it would be different after evolution. It could still improve rapidly. The big fat bear was also a second-generation sprite, the descendant of a monarch. In the future, the difficulty of breaking through to the extraordinary level would be far less than Butterfly, Dazed Crow, and the others. It wouldn't take long. After a comprehensive calculation, Su Hao planned to start preparing for the evolution requirements of the electric bear. The materials it needed weren't special. A minimum of 200 credits was enough, and if it was more, it would only cost up to 500 credits. Cheap. But last semester, I remember Panda Elder mentioning that when the big fat bear can evolve into its final form, it's best to evolve at Bear King Mountain. It should be able to gain some benefits by evolving there. Did Su Hao need to hesitate? Of course he chose to take a break. He planned to set off tomorrow, but he suddenly remembered something important. School team battle practice. It had been almost a month since the last time. The name list had long been filled in the wristband. He opened it and took a look. In 3 days? Then, the evolution shall be delayed for a few days. 3 days later, Su Hao brought Butterfly to the simulation battlefield at the back of the special training area. There weren't many people. Apart from the 10 people in the school team, there were only 20 to 30 spectators. After all, a simulation team battle wasn't as exciting as a battle. The people who came should have. As he was thinking, suddenly, an instructor told him. You've been singled out for a challenge. Me? He turned. He saw a person in a sprite walking over slowly. Su Hao found that person a little familiar, but he didn't remember him very clearly. However, when he saw the sprite with a humanoid body and a leaf robe, he remembered. So it's you, Senior Joe. It was still the empty field during the team battle. It was still Butterfly Fairy and young Master Cattail, looking at each other from hundreds of meters away. But after a month of not seeing him, there was some change in young Master Cattail's aura. It was like an unsheathed sword, revealing its sharpness. Battle, begin. As soon as Instructor Ma finished speaking, white dandelions immediately flew out around young Master Cattail. Unlike last time, it clearly didn't dare to continue competing with Butterfly Fairy in terms of strength reserves. Instead, it connected all the dandelions and formed a long white dandelion dragon. With the superimposition of unique skills, I'll fuse all the dandelions into one whole. That way, even if Butterfly Fairy uses the illusion butterfly to clash, that gush of spirit power will be dissipated by most of the dandelions. My number of dandelions won't decrease for the time being. As long as I find Butterfly Fairy's true body before the dandelion dragon exhausts half of its power, I'll be able to get my victory back. I won't be careless anymore. He stared fixedly at Butterfly Fairy's figure. The exquisite and beautiful sprite remained where it was, motionless, allowing the white dragon to swallow it. No, no. The white dragon raised its head and waved its tail, shaking the air around it. It rumbled, but the green figure didn't appear. Suddenly, the alertness from the contract connection made Zhou Ming suddenly shocked. He saw that young Master Cattail was actually standing rooted to the ground. The long white dragon also floated in the air. After a while, the long white dragon dispersed inch by inch. Countless white dandelions danced and scattered in all directions. As for the frozen young Master Cattail, no matter what sprite commandeering method Zhou Ming's used, he couldn't wake it up. He gritted his teeth and used sprite commandeering, visual sharing. Instantly, the scene in front of him changed. Young Master Cattail was in a coffin. Its whole body was bound by red bandages. Outside the coffin was endless darkness. The darkness kept spinning. With just one look, he felt dizzy, as if he was going to be swallowed by the darkness. The sprite commandeering, visual sharing was forcefully broken, and even Zhou Ming's body shook. In just 2 seconds, young Master Cattail collapsed with a plop. Less than half a minute after the battle started, it had fallen straight down. Both the ordinary members of the special training camp and the members of the school team drew a cold breath. It was too scary. A month's worth of change completely crushed young Master Cattail. Su Hao caught the shrunken butterfly and shook his head slightly. It has no counter-illusion techniques, no stronger willpower than steel, and its spirit power is much weaker than butterfly, then, being insta-killed is completely reasonable. Su Hao felt that the people around him were making too much of a fuss. Sit down, no, just lie down. Chapter 238, Returning to Bear King Mountain. The next day, Su Hao walked out of the bus stop in Ningshan City. This was a 4th or 5th tier city, but the cars coming and going on the road were still packed. Su Hao called for a taxi and set off from the bus stop, heading towards a village dozens of kilometers away. It took him 2 hours. His butt was numb. *CK, if I had known, I would have ridden the horse out. At this point, there was only Butterfly by his side, but Butterfly's psychic power couldn't bring him flying dozens of miles like the trading puppet. He brought Butterfly with him for safety. As a bodyguard, while the other sprites stayed in school to continue cultivating. But it seemed a little inappropriate to be a bodyguard. Su Hao took out his cell phone and used the black screen as a mirror to look at himself. Then, he saw a small butterfly sitting on top of his head. Its cell phone hung a few centimeters in front of itself. Its 2 little hands tapped on the cell phone, and he did not know what it was doing. He lowered his head and looked up. Butterfly sat there steadily like a rock. Its figure never moved. Until he was knocked. Gurgle Butterfly was angry.jpg. At the village entrance, Su Hao glanced and noticed no one was around, then he spread his fingers and shouted, "Sprite commandeering, summon." Ripples appeared in space as a big fat bear appeared. Its posture was a little strange. It bent its knees, stretched its arms out in front of it, and stared ahead. After being summoned, it sat down on the road with a thud. After being stunned for 2 seconds, he let out a tragic cry. Sob. It was about to win. Under the sun, the big white bear looked like a fatty weighing 680 pounds. It cried until Su Hao said, "When we get back, I'll get you the limited edition skin of the whole thunder-roaring sprite." Hey! Howl! On the deserted road, a big fat bear ran on all fours. There was someone sitting on it, holding onto the white hair with his hand. His body kept moving up and down, left and right. It was a little dizzy. The experience of riding a big fat bear is indeed not very good. Its advantage is that its fur is soft, but when it runs, it wobbles too much. After getting used to the dumb unicorn, which was already a half-mature mount, and then experiencing the big fat bear, Su Hao could only give it a 1-star evaluation. The base of Ningxian City was called the Bear King Mountain Base. It was easy to remember. It was a base that wasn't open to ordinary sprite trainers, and even elite-level sprite trainers would be blocked outside. Su Hao wouldn't. Even without Senior Wu leading the way, he already had an extraordinary status at this point. LV9 Union Privileges. After verifying his identity, he stepped in. This place was still cold and cheerless. There weren't many people who needed to be stationed at the base. Most of the staff worked in the nurturing of sprites, using the influence of the world entrance on the surrounding areas to breed sprites in batches. Sprites nurtured were very helpful for ordinary people in contracting. After all, experts had evolved step by step from ordinary people and newbies. For example, himself. In the base, after Su Hao registered, he submitted his application to go to Bear King Mountain. Thanks to his status, he didn't wait long. They just checked his identity and his belongings. After dozens of minutes, Su Hao passed the entrance and arrived at the small fortress where signal towers could be seen everywhere. Another horse. The bear kept running towards Bear King Mountain. Howl, 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 howl. In front of Bear King Mountain, the big fat bear stood up and let out a roar. In a moment, bear sprites ran down from the mountain one after another, surrounding the big fat bear and making aooo, aooo, and other calls. The big fat bear also kept calling out cockily. Especially when it saw that its former teammates who were about its age were only in the form of rolling beasts, panda babies, and teddy bears. They were shorter than it by more than one head. It was extremely happy. It carried a rolling beast that didn't resist in one hand and ran up the mountain. On the mountain side of Bear King Mountain, Su Hao couldn't help but be speechless when he saw the big fat bear running towards the main hall of the internet cafe immediately. But forget it, the food at Bear King Mountain is good. I'll stay a few more days. At this moment, a Luhan panda with an ancient aura walked over slowly. It opened its mouth and spoke Dragon Nation language. "Human, my friend, welcome to Bear King Mountain. Sorry for disturbing you, Elder." Su Hao exchanged a few words with the Luhan panda elder. It looked at the big fat bear in the hall from time to time, the expression on its face looked very pleased and satisfied. "I didn't expect it to evolve towards its final form after just half a year. Very good, very good. Come with me." After Panda Elder finished speaking, it walked forward. Su Hao followed. He climbed the stone stairs all the way to the top of the mountain. When he arrived at one of the halls, he saw. What's that? A hexagonal crystal about the size of a palm, transparent and regulated, floated quietly on a stone base. Inside, one could vaguely see the purple lightning on its finger pulsating slightly. But there didn't seem to be any energy waves. Su Hao glanced at the interface. Before he could filter out the hexagonal crystal from the surrounding treasure icons, he heard Panda Elder say. "That's the crystal of nature. The one in front of me is the mark of my brother, its father's existence, after he returned to nature. It was also a treasure. An extremely precious treasure. Compared to the heart of attributes that could be picked up anywhere, there was only one condition for the birth of the heart of nature: a powerful sprite returning to nature. The worth was obvious. There wasn't even any in Whale Island University's treasury, and the Dragon Nation's headquarters treasury may not even have monarch-rank crystals of nature. This crystal of nature is a gift from its father. Absorbing it during its evolution can bring the most benefits. Indeed, the treatment of a second-generation bear was very extraordinary. But Su Hao knew that there was a prerequisite. The big fat bear's growth had to satisfy Panda Elder. Otherwise, the electric bear, as a bear that had already been contracted by humans and was transferred from Bear King Mountain to Dragon Nation. It was also reasonable and logical that Panda Elder didn't leave the crystal of nature for it. It wasn't like only the big fat bear could absorb it. After accepting the crystal of nature, Su Hao temporarily stayed at the human accommodation on Bear King Mountain. The accommodation was built in a corner of the mountain. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the sea of clouds, feeling very at ease. The renovation and decor of the suite was also very luxurious, as though they were staying in a five-star hotel. He seriously suspected that because the accommodation was occupied by humans, the infrastructure team had built it most exquisitely. But he liked it. At night, in the main hall of the internet cafe, the big fat bear was on a killing streak. In the human world, it was limited by experience and bear paws. Its battle results were a little poor. But after returning to his hometown and using the technology it learned from the human world, it immediately defeated many adult bears and became the celebrity fat bear on Bear King Mountain. It felt like it had reached the peak of its bear life. At this moment, its whole body trembled. It turned its head stiffly and looked back, only to see the sprite trainer made a terrifying stare and was staring at it. Howl! It tried to act pitiful, but failed. It was dragged out by the sprite trainer. But it didn't dare to resist. It could only follow Su Hao's footsteps and staggered out. They returned to the accommodation. It squatted there pitifully. It looked like it was admitting its mistake. Seeing this, Su Hao took out a piece of paper and a pen and made a three-point covenant with it. Maintaining a happy mood could help in the integrity of evolution, but it had to be wary of being addicted. Especially when you're just an underage bear. On Bear King Mountain, Butterfly played games with the big fat bear from time to time, and occasionally stayed in the accommodation. On the other hand, Su Hao himself wandered around to get some intelligence points. On the third day, he judged from the interface information that the time was almost right. He called Big Fat Bear and headed to the Thunder Prison at the top of the mountain. In the Thunder Prison area, dark clouds were pressed very low, and thunder kept coming all year round. The scene in front of him was similar to the last time. The difference was that the big fat bear was bathed in thunder. It didn't need to whimper and just walked a kilometer or two against the thick lightning pillar. It had absorbed a lot of high-level thunder. After a long while, Su Hao felt that it was about time, so he let it come back. He opened the box where the materials were stored and solemnly took out the gift from Fat Bear's father. Go, bring these materials to the Thunder Prison and complete your evolution. Chapter 239, Evolution. Thunder Imprint. The big fat bear received the crystal of nature in a daze. The magnificent hexagonal crystal floated quietly above its palms. It had actually never seen its father. It only knew that there was once a shoulder-thick thunder roar that birthed it with its final source. Then, it returned to nature. As a sprite, the big fat bear wasn't sad. On Bear King Mountain, many young friends didn't have the concept of father and mother. But when it looked at the hexagonal crystal in front of it, it felt very close to it. As it looked at it in a daze, its bare eyes were slightly misty. It looked into the depths of the Thunder Prison and walked forward step by step, its footsteps firm and filled with conviction. Suddenly, it heard the sprite trainer shouting behind it, "Wait!" Without looking back, the electric bear continued to walk forward, its back view filled with determination. You forgot to bring the other materials. Roar. Its step froze in mid-air. In the thunder prison, blue-purple lightning pillars fell from the dark clouds in mid-air. Some landed on the chubby figure in the thunder prison. It was like a fat and wide lightning rod, absorbing all the thunder arcs around it. Not a trace of lightning landed on those materials. After a while, its bare eyes were a little reluctant, but it still raised the hexagonal crystal and pressed it against its forehead, to draw the power contained within. In an instant, an extremely dazzling thunderbolt appeared in Su Hao's eyes, making the whole thunder prison and countless thunderbolts pale in comparison. In just a moment, everything returned to normal. Su Hao, who used sprite commandeering, visual sharing, saw that the crystal of nature in front of the big fat bear's forehead only had an outline left. The color of the outline gradually faded until it finally disappeared. At this moment, there was no change on the big fat bear's body. He knew that the power of the crystal of nature had already begun to take effect on the big fat bear. It just needed to be excavated, and evolution was the best way. It could absorb most of the power of the crystal of nature. It's also the descendant of that thunder roaring, it should be able to absorb 80 to 90%. There were too few records of people absorbing crystals of nature in Dragon Nation. Without judgment standards, Su Hao wasn't sure either. In the Sea of Lightning, the big fat bear, which had absorbed the natural crystal, moved swiftly and immediately swallowed one thunder element essence after another. It had absorbed a lot of electric energy, and was full after just swallowing a few portions. Slowly, lightning surged on its body. It no longer absorbed thunder from the outside, but countless thunderbolts emerged from its body. Along with the thunder from the outside world, it gradually interweaved into a huge light cocoon. That light cocoon was big and round, and on the basis of the big fat bear's size, it was several times bigger. It was constantly absorbing the thunder energy of the thunder prison. Sizzle! Sizzle! As time passed, the light on the huge light cocoon became increasingly dazzling, gradually attracting even more thunder. Tens of meters. Dozens of meters. Hundreds of meters. The sea of lightning around the huge bluish-purple light cocoon was actually swept away. Even if new thunder arcs emerged, they would turn 90 degrees, 130 degrees in the air and directly enter the huge light cocoon. Gurgle. On the throne above his head, Butterfly waved and cheered for her little brother. She took out her cell phone and took a photo. Then, it called Su Hao. Su Hao turned around, with his back facing the Sea of Lightning and his face facing his cell phone. Under the psychic control, the cell phone flew a few meters away. The camera was aimed at him, Butterfly, the Sea of Lightning, and the big and round light cocoon in the Sea of Lightning. Crack, crack, crack. Several pictures were taken from various angles. It flew back again. Su Hao picked it up and took a look. A man and a sprite were smiling at the camera. Behind them was an endless sea of thunder, as if doomsday had arrived. Real men never look back at the apocalypse. I feel like I can post on chat moments. Unfortunately, there's no internet here. Time passed second by second. Probably because the thunder prison environment was very advanced, the time needed for the big fat bear to evolve was shorter than Butterfly and Dazed Crow. In 39 minutes and 19 seconds, the big fat bear's evolution would be approaching its end. In an instant, all the thunder within a radius of over a kilometer was absorbed. The huge light cocoon blossomed with the most dazzling brilliance, and cracking sounds like eggshells rang out. At the same time, a thunderous roar echoed throughout the entire thunder prison. Howl, howl! In an instant, all the lightning seemed to stop. A huge, two-legged fat bear broke free of the light cocoon and roared. At the same time, sounds of ding 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 rang in Su Hao's ears. It was more violent than any previous evolution. Ding! Your sprite, Electric Bear, has completed its evolution and become a new form, Thunder Roaring, Thunder. Ding! Your sprite has completed the baptism of evolution and successfully comprehended unique skills: Thunder Cannon, Thunder Dragon, Thunder God's Spear, Thunder God's Shield, Thunder Hell Roar. Ding! Your sprite has completed the baptism of evolution. The Thunder element energy has suddenly become very cordial. Thunder element control has increased from LV2 to LV3. Ding! Your sprite has completed. It has gained a slight understanding of all kinds of unique skills. The application of Thunder element unique skills has risen by a level. Ding! During the evolution process, your sprite received the approval of the Heaven and Earth element and has obtained a trace of Thunder Imprint. Ding! Ding-dong sounds of the interface. Thunder rumbled. Interweaving with the roaring of the big fat bear, he felt his eardrums buzzing. In his eyes, the evolved big fat bear had already grown to 3 meters tall. Its body was still covered in fluffy hair. On its arms and chest, there were clusters of purple hair that were no longer white, forming lightning symbols. There was also a lightning symbol on its forehead. It wasn't made of hair, but a trace of materialized nomological laws. It was a nomological mark. That's the Thunder Imprint. Elemental control is an extraordinary symbol, while nomological imprints are monarch rank symbols. Although the big fat bear's talent is extremely high, it's undoubtedly thanks to the crystal of nature that it was able to gain the recognition of the laws of heaven and earth at the elite level. The unique skills comprehended and the advancement in elemental control should also be. Its compatibility with the crystal of nature is very high, equivalent to obtaining an inheritance. Su Hao knew very well what that meant. In the past, the big fat bear only had a slightly higher chance of breaking through to monarch rank than ordinary sprites, and whether it could break through was still unknown. But now, it practically got a monarch rank pass. It was the big fat bear, the future monarch. Su Hao was very surprised. It can't be that in the future, the first sprite to break through to the monarch rank will be the big fat bear, right? It's clearly the least hard-working one. As expected, hard-working isn't a match for cheating, especially with the renewal fee. It's already a VIP 1-3 cheat. He poked Butterfly. You have to work hard. If Big Fat Bear overtakes you, I'll be in a difficult position too. What if the Big Fat Bear was the first monarch rank? What would be the first heavenly king domain he should solidify? It was really difficult. This sprite trainer is so difficult. Butterfly thought about how its little brothers were either fighting with their lives on the line or cheating. Its little face also became more solemn. It was too difficult for it to keep its position. Gurgle. Chapter 240, regarding how the big fat bear became a qualified meat shield. In the Sea of Thunder, the big fat bear strode over. The thunder imprint on its forehead gradually faded, but its power was still extraordinary. It came in front of Su Hao and lowered its head, ... It wasn't used to seeing the short sprite trainer. Howl, howl, howl. It was still shouting excitedly. Its voice was much louder and more imposing than before. Su Hao felt that after completing the baptism of evolution and the legacy of the crystal of nature, it should be an indomitable bear, able to bear the heavy responsibility of being a team meat shield. 3 meters tall, fat, strong body, he looked very secure. It was a pretty good meat shield. Gurgle. Roar. Gurgle, gurgle. Butterfly put one hand on its waist and pointed at the materials in the Sea of Thunder, asking it why it wasted them. The big fat bear turned to look. Without it as a lightning rod to absorb the surrounding lightning, many materials with poor resistance to lightning had already been completely destroyed in the Thunder prison, not even dregs left. Seeing this scene, it froze. The fat all over his body trembled, and the mighty and extraordinary aura instantly dissipated. It was clearly a huge body 3 meters tall, but it looked like a pitiful child who had made a mistake. Su Hao was rendered speechless. This sprite seems to be useless, why don't? He opened the interface again and tapped on the big fat bear's icon. Sprite, Thunder Roaring, Elite. Characteristics, Thunder Net. Attributes, Thunder. Unique skill, omitted. Mark. 1. Thunder Elemental Control LV3. 2. Thunder Mark, I. Special. 1. Thunder Vortex. Countless thunder whips combine to form a thunder vortex, dragging the surrounding enemies in front of them. 2. Meat Bouncing Ball, incarnate into a huge thunder ball. It has the ability to change directions in the air, has pretty good defense, and strong destructive power. Evolutionary pathway. Rolling Beast Electric Bear Thunder Roaring Pitch Black, not unlocked. 3. Intelligence points to search for advancement direction. It was a familiar interface. It was a familiar routine. He consumed intelligence points. Another ding sound came in his ears. The data streaked across like water, and pitch black outlines unfolded one after another. Advancement direction. 1. Inheritance Evolution, Compatibility 100%, unlock with 6 intelligence points. Plus 3. Destructive Thunder Evolution, Compatibility 91%, unlock with 10 intelligence points. 4. Armor Evolution, Compatibility 90%, unlock with 10 intelligence points. Plus 6. Frenzy Evolution, Compatibility 72%, unlock with 10 intelligence points. Plus. Su-Hao discovered the blind spot. The intelligence points needed for the big fat bear to unlock the plan was actually less than Butterfly and Dazed Crow. It was cheaper than the market price. Apart from inheritance evolution, the intelligence points needed for other advanced evolution are also less. This means that if it wants to undergo the fourth evolution, the materials and conditions needed are easier than other sprites. I didn't expect the big fat bear to save intelligence points for me. Not bad, I didn't raise it for nothing. But the key still depends on whether it can become a qualified meat shield. Therefore, Su-Hao reached out and stroked the bear. It felt a little better than before it evolved. He rubbed it up and down. After dozens of seconds, he came to a conclusion: his attack power was too low, and he couldn't compare to the big fat bear's current defense power. Butterfly, give it a try. Butterfly flew up, turned its fingers, and looked at it. The big fat bear took a step back, then another. Seeing this, Butterfly attacked instantly. A light spot the size of a grain of rice appeared on its fingertip. The light spot flew out and expanded to the size of a basketball in mid-air. With a whoosh, it flew in front of the big fat bear. In an instant, the big fat bear was originally capable of releasing countless bolts of lightning around its body. The lightning interweaved into a hemisphere-shaped round shield, blocking in front of it. The energy ball rumbled. The aftershock from the explosion wasn't strong. Most of the energy was annihilated when it collided with the hemisphere-shaped thunder shield. Hey! The big fat bear half opened its eyes and looked pitifully at Big Sister, then at the sprite trainer. Let go of the bear, sob. That move is Thunder God's Shield, right? Thunder elements are mainly destructive. It wasn't that there weren't any defensive unique skills, but there wasn't any unique skill called Thunder God's Shield. It was an inherited unique skill. It was different from ordinary defensive unique skills. Its core was not blocking but annihilation. As long as I destroy all the attacks, I won't be injured. This unique skill definitely has the potential to continue developing. Come, use it again. Howl howl. Without needing to be beaten, the big fat bear was relieved and obediently displayed its unique skill. Due to its inheritance, it was also very familiar with using the unique skill it had just learned. Lightning interweaved into a ball-shaped shield with crackling sounds, enveloping it. Su-Hao stared at the thunder shield and pondered. By focusing on developing the destructive power of Thunder God's Shield and incorporating it into the secret manual Meat Bouncing Thunder Ball, its destructive power will increase further. And if the focus is on developing the plasticity of Thunder God's Shield. He gestured. Compress a little more. The big fat bear scratched its head. Under its LV3 elemental control, the ball-shaped thunder shield gradually changed from a ball shape to a bear-human shape that matched its figure, like a battle armor that constantly flickered with lightning. Not enough, not enough. It can't be lightning-like armor, but real armor. He took out the computer he carried with him and found an e-book he had bought and downloaded in the past. Then, he pushed the computer in front of Big Fat Bear. You're already a LV3 sprite with elemental control. It's very easy to learn how to solidify spiritual force. Su Hao said, I'll give you an assignment. Use a week to learn the technique of consolidating spiritual force. I'll get a designer to design an armor for you according to your size. Then, you'll use the consolidation of spiritual force to build a Thunder God battle armor using the violent thunder and thunder elements as your own spiritual force battle armor. After he finished speaking, he added, as long as you put on the armor, as long as you continue to forge armors and increase your defense, it won't hurt even if you get beaten up in the future. Howl! 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 The big fat bear agreed without hesitation. Since the big fat bear had successfully evolved, it had to first be pulled in front of Elder Panda to show off its skills. As expected, it received praise and rewards from the big bosses of the bear tribes. Su Hao then let it learn from the other thunder roarings, in exchange for it being able to stay and abuse its little bear buddies. He spent half a day just being busy. When he returned to the accommodation, Su Hao stopped in his tracks. He saw a human walking out of one of the suites. It was a young man, and he was also stunned when he saw him. You also got the right to cultivate at Bear King Mountain, the person opposite said. Su Hao, obviously. What else? Interesting, I thought I was the only one who got the favor of Bear King Mountain, I didn't expect. The young man raised his brows. You've successfully piqued my interest. Looking at you, you should also be a university student. My name is Lu Jianqian, a second-year student from Dragon City University. Su Hao, from Whale Island University. As expected, you're also a student of a prestigious school. Lu Jianqian looked behind him and continued, that thunder roaring is the sprite you contracted on Bear King Mountain, right? I wonder if you dare to fight with my Luhan Panda. Oh, of course. You can also use other sprites if you want. Lu Jiangxuan's Luhan Panda had a sharp gaze with a cold light on its claws. Standing there, it had the aura of a martial arts expert. As for Big Fat Bear, it had its head lowered. It was immersed in the joy of its 8 successive kills and had yet to recover from it. It had no aura. Seeing the thunder roaring in that state, Lu Jianqian was a little disappointed. A thunder roaring that didn't look imposing was actually qualified to cultivate on Bear King Mountain?